As Donald Trump nears the final stretch of the presidential campaign, his influence over the Republican Party has reached unprecedented levels, reshaping it through a combination of intimidation and purges. Trump's relentless demand for loyalty has come at a cost, potentially alienating crucial voters in a highly competitive race. Congressman Tom Rice's experience underscores this transformation. Rice, a South Carolina Republican, became a target for Trump's ire after voting to impeach the former president for inciting the January 6, 2021, Capitol riot. The backlash was swift and severe. Rice's office was inundated with angry calls and emails, including 3 death threats. During his campaign for a 6th term, a sheriff's deputy was often present at his public events for protection. Trump endorsed Rice's opponent in the GOP primary, vehemently denouncing the congressman as a traitor who partnered with the Democrats to stab the Republican Party and our country in the back. The impact of Trump's endorsement was devastating. Rice was decisively defeated in the primary, a casualty of Trump's campaign to purge the party of those deemed disloyal. Once a respected conservative figure, Rice now finds himself ostracized by former allies and friends. He feels betrayed by fellow Republicans who, he believes, prioritized their positions and power over their constitutional oaths. Trump's quest for loyalty has not been limited to individual lawmakers. It has permeated every level of the Republican Party, from state and local officials to congressional members, cabinet secretaries, and even presidential rivals. His approach has been marked by a strategy of intimidation and retribution, targeting those who oppose him or his agenda. By enforcing a stringent loyalty test, Trump has effectively remade the Republican Party in his image, sidelining those who resist and consolidating power among his staunchest supporters. As Trump seeks his 3rd consecutive Republican presidential nomination, his methods of control and dominance have left a significant mark on the party. This reshaping, driven by a blend of fear and allegiance, could have profound implications for the party's future and its appeal to a broader electorate. Since the launch of his Truth Social platform in early 2022, Donald Trump has used it as a weapon to attack fellow Republicans, targeting over 100 party officials, activists, and right-leaning media figures in more than 600 posts. His nearly 20,000 posts on the platform reveal a relentless campaign to reshape the Republican Party according to his own vision. One prominent example is Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia, a state Trump narrowly lost in the 2020 presidential election. At an August 3 rally, Trump derisively referred to Kemp as Little Brian and criticized him for not aiding in overturning the 2020 results. Trump's attacks on Kemp were framed as part of a broader effort to purge the party of those he views as disloyal. Earlier that day, he wrote on Truth Social, "We have to purge the party of people that go against our candidates and make it harder for a popular Republican president to beat the radical left." Trump's primary tool in this purge is his influential endorsement, which he uses to eliminate Republicans who cross him. Since the start of 2022, Trump has endorsed challengers against at least 13 GOP members of Congress whom he accuses of betrayal. Of these, only 3 managed to retain their seats or remain in the race. Among the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump, only 2 remain in office. 4 were defeated by Trump-endorsed primary challengers, including Liz Cheney, a former member of House leadership, and 4 chose not to run again. Many of these lawmakers faced threats and harassment from Trump's supporters, as documented by police reports and their own statements. Trump's influence extends beyond high-profile lawmakers. He frequently targets lower-tier party officials, state legislators, judges, and local election officials whose careers have been upended by his criticism and the subsequent harassment from his supporters. Over a quarter of Trump's Republican targets on Truth Social have been these relatively obscure figures. When asked about Trump's divisive tactics, Trump campaign press secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the former president's actions, stating, "President Trump continues to build a historic and unified political movement to make America strong, wealthy, and safe again." In Texas, conservative legislator Glenn Rogers experienced the wrath of Trump's supporters after voting to impeach State Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Trump ally, over allegations of misuse of office. Though Paxton was acquitted, Rogers faced intense backlash. Threats emerged, including a Facebook post warning him to "face your maker," and vandals defaced his campaign signs with "Reno Republican" in name only. In the lead-up to the party's nomination vote, Trump publicly denounced Rogers, endorsing his opponent, who ultimately defeated him. Rogers described the fallout as like a tsunami, noting the almost cult-like devotion some Trump supporters exhibit. Despite the personal and political toll, Rogers remains committed to voting for Trump, viewing the Democrats as too far left for his taste. Trump's strategy has not only realigned the Republican Party but also fostered a climate of fear and loyalty, reshaping its dynamics in ways that may have lasting implications for American politics. Since 2021, at least 39 elected national and state Republican officials have faced threats or harassment for actions or views perceived as opposing Donald Trump and his Make America Great Again, MAGA, agenda. This includes Republicans who have questioned Trump's unfounded claims about the 2020 election being stolen. "Menace is a big part of the power," said Sarah Longwell, a former Republican strategist and publisher of The Bulwark, an anti-Trump publication. Longwell, who also runs Republican Voters Against Trump, a political action group, notes that Republicans who challenge Trump must grapple with the dual fears of facing threats of violence and career ruin. It's hard to disaggregate the fear of political violence and the fear of career suicide. By the time Trump secured the Republican presidential nomination on July 18, the party was largely unified behind him. Many of his prominent critics, including former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and former Attorney General William Barr, both of whom had initially criticized Trump as unfit for office, reversed their positions and pledged their support. Trump's aggressive tactics have significant political ramifications. Initially, his attacks on fellow Republicans seemed less consequential given the vulnerability of his Democratic opponent, President Joe Biden, who faced concerns about his age and lagged in the polls. However, as Vice President Kamala Harris gains ground and begins to even out the polls, Trump's intra-party conflicts could become detrimental. David Wasserman, senior editor at the Cook Political Report, describes these attacks as self-harm, particularly in a tight race where Trump needs the backing of Republican moderates. In Arizona, once a state where Trump seemed poised for victory, Harris now leads by 7 percentage points among independent and unaffiliated voters, according to recent surveys by Doug Cole, a Republican strategist at High Ground. Cole asserts, he's got a problem with moderate Republicans. "I don't know how this premise of purging the party helps him." Polling aggregates reflect a tight contest in Arizona overall, but Trump's strategy of purging the party of dissenters may be weakening his support among crucial voter segments. Intimidation tactics against Republicans who challenge Donald Trump often unfold in both overt and subtle ways, with the former president and his network playing a central role. One vivid example is the experience of Congressman Tom Rice, who voted to impeach Trump in January 2021. After his vote, Rice received a stern phone call from then House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, who expressed his disapproval. He said, "Tom, you hit the wrong button," Rice recounted. Rice, however, stood by his decision, replying, "No, I didn't, Steve. I loaded it exactly the way I intended." Scalise's office declined to comment on the conversation. The backlash Rice faced was swift and severe. His office was flooded with hundreds of angry emails and voicemails, including one ominous warning to watch out. Shortly thereafter, the South Carolina Republican Party formally censured him. Trump amplified the criticism, branding Rice a disaster who was respected by no one. Publicly, some constituents labeled him a traitor, and others criticized him for condemning the pro-Trump rioters who stormed the Capitol. Trump's campaign of intimidation extended beyond public vitriol. After the impeachment vote, Rice and the 9 other Republican House members who defied Trump were targeted by Steve Bannon, the former chief strategist in Trump's White House. On Bannon's Daily War Room podcast, Rice was condemned as worthless and not coming back, with the criticism continuing for 2 days. Bannon's podcast, which has a significant following among pro-Trump circles, plays a key role in promoting and amplifying Trump's purge of dissenters. Bannon's influence extends through a far-right online network that echoes and magnifies Trump's calls to eliminate those deemed unfaithful. Even as Bannon began serving a 5-month prison sentence in July for refusing to testify before Congress about the Capitol attack, his show continued to be a platform for other mega figures, perpetuating the cycle of intimidation. Rice remains resolute despite the pressure. If you are conservative and support the Constitution, you cannot support what Donald Trump has done, he said. His experience underscores the broader atmosphere of fear and coercion that has become a hallmark of Trump's influence within the Republican Party, creating an environment where dissent can have profound personal and political consequences. Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon, a retired Air Force general and evangelical Christian with a staunchly conservative record, has faced a disturbing pattern of threats and harassment fueled by far-right media figures like Steve Bannon. In October, Bannon targeted Bacon for his opposition to the candidacy of Trump ally Jim Jordan as House Speaker. Bannon described Bacon as one of the hardcore, labeling him as a never-Trump Republican and urging his audience to contact Bacon's office. The resulting harassment was severe. Bacon and his wife received anonymous threats and abusive messages via text and phone. One caller even threatened to stalk and molest Bacon's wife, prompting her to sleep with a loaded gun for protection. Another message included a vile insult: "You think you're the chosen one because you married the pig. See you later, bitch." Bacon attributes this aggressive behavior to the radicalizing influence of far-right commentators, who foster an ends justify the means mentality among their followers. "You have a few bloggers out there and people on social media with 1 million followers, and everything they say is gospel," Bacon observed. These influencers, he believes, use their platforms to enforce loyalty to Trump and his agenda, creating an environment where dissent is met with extreme hostility. Despite the intimidation and the endorsement of his opponent by the state Republican Party chairman, Bacon secured the Republican nomination for his seat this spring with over 60% of the vote. His experience highlights the powerful and often perilous impact of far-right media on American politics, illustrating how the enforcement of loyalty to Trump can lead to personal threats and profound political pressures. Fred Upton, a former Republican congressman from Michigan, faced intense backlash after voting to impeach Donald Trump in response to the Capitol riots. On the day of the impeachment vote, Steve Bannon called for constituents to deal with the Republicans who supported impeachment, leading to a flood of threats directed at Upton. One email, shared with Reuters, read, "Who the hell do you think you are? You work for US. There is no GOP without Mega Nation. Get ready for hell. 'Cause we're going to make your life a living one." Upton, reflecting on the experience, noted the pervasive fear among lawmakers of being targeted by Trump and Bannon. "Nobody wants to be on that list," he said, underscoring the intense pressure to conform within the party. While Reuters could not reach Bannon, who is currently serving a prison sentence, his daughter Maureen Bannon, CEO of the War Room podcast, dismissed critics like Upton as out-of-touch millionaires. She accused them of being part of the real threat to freedom, which she claimed comes from elites who are intimidating and trying to silence dissent and punishing their political opponents. Trump's influence remained a potent force against Upton. In December 2022, Trump derided Upton on social media, labeling him a rhino and a disaster for anything having to do with the word Republican after Upton's name was floated as a potential House Speaker candidate. Facing mounting pressure in a redrawn district that pitted him against a Trump-backed opponent, Upton chose not to seek re-election. Looking ahead, Upton expressed concern about the possibility of retribution in a second Trump White House. "They're going to be going after people," he warned, reflecting on Trump's vows to exact revenge against those he perceives as enemies. Upton's experience illustrates the high stakes for Republicans who challenge Trump's dominance, highlighting the profound impact of his influence on party dynamics and individual political careers. Donald Trump's relentless criticism and threats have primarily targeted two groups of Republicans, those competing against him for the 2024 presidential nomination and those who challenged his unfounded claims about the 2020 election. Trump's attacks on his presidential rivals have been particularly intense. He ridiculed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis with the nickname DeSanctimonious over 250 times. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, who was the last to drop out of the race, was mockingly labeled birdbrain more than 50 times. Both DeSantis and Haley faced significant harassment and threats throughout the campaign, leading to increased security measures for both. DeSantis, who eventually endorsed Trump, did not comment on the harassment. Haley's office, however, noted no direct threats from Trump's supporters but acknowledged the general atmosphere of hostility she faced. Trump's reach extended beyond high-profile rivals to lesser-known state and local officials who resisted his false claims of a stolen 2020 election. Rusty Bowers, a conservative Republican and former Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, faced severe backlash for his refusal to overturn Biden's narrow win in the state. Bowers was branded a traitor by local party members, his office was inundated with threatening messages, and a man with a pistol even showed up at his home. Trump responded by denouncing Bowers as weak and wrong on everything, and endorsed a rival in the 2022 state Senate race. Bowers lost his seat, and he felt the impact of Trump's wrath lingered. "I have been neutralized in their mind," he said, reflecting on his diminished role and influence. These cases illustrate the profound and often personal toll of Trump's strategy to consolidate power and enforce loyalty within the Republican Party. His attacks have not only targeted high-profile figures but also extended to grassroots officials, reshaping the party landscape through a combination of public denouncements, private threats, and strategic endorsements. In the transformed Republican Party, grassroots supporters have assumed the role of enforcing loyalty to Donald Trump, actively identifying and vilifying those they view as misaligned with his leadership. Matt Fogel, the former Republican District Attorney of Pennsylvania's Franklin County, exemplifies this dynamic. With a background that once bolstered his standing in the state's conservative South Central region, having served in the National Guard and attended an evangelical church, Fogel was a fixture in local politics. He was elected district attorney in 2009 and ran uncontested in subsequent elections, in a county where Trump secured over 70% of the vote in both 2016 and 2020. Despite his personal misgivings about Trump's disparaging remarks about immigrants, Muslims, and women, Fogel chose to remain silent, hoping that the country would recover from the Trump presidency and address any damage later. However, his stance changed dramatically in May 2020, amidst nationwide racial justice protests following the police killing of George Floyd. During the protests in predominantly white Franklin County, Fogel publicly praised the demonstrators for their positive spirit of change and equality and criticized Trump's decision to authorize the National Guard to use force on protesters in Washington. This public break from Trump's stance provoked immediate backlash from Trump supporters and some local police officers. They swiftly condemned Fogel, marking him as a target of their disapproval. Fogel's experience underscores the extent to which Trump's influence has permeated local politics, turning grassroots supporters into enforcers of loyalty and punishing those who deviate from his rhetoric. His story reflects the intense polarization within the Republican Party, where dissent against Trump's views can result in significant personal and professional repercussions. Matt Fogel's decision to publicly challenge Trump's stance during the racial justice protests marked a turning point that reshaped his life and career. In meetings with local law enforcement, Fogel was met with hostility. An officer labeled him a Marxist, and at a local church, the pastor questioned whether he supported looters and rioters. The fallout extended to his personal life. His wife, a beautician, lost clients, and some relatives severed ties with him. Even the local Republican Party publicly denounced him. Fogel was disoriented by the intensity of the backlash and the way his community's reverence for Trump manifested. "It was the first time I had seen this kind of worship and idolatry, the way they talked about Trump," he reflected. By September, having been effectively cast out by the Republican Party, Fogel endorsed Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Following the Capitol riots, he re-registered as an independent. Although he did not receive death threats, some former colleagues advised him to carry a gun for protection, fearing potential violence from Trump supporters. As his term as district attorney drew to a close, Fogel sought new opportunities in the private sector but found himself ostracized. Local law firms hesitated to hire him, labeling him too hot to handle. Eventually, Fogel secured a position as a lawyer with the Pennsylvania Governor's General Counsel Office, leading him to resign from his role as district attorney. Despite this new start, Fogel still feels the sting of his community's rejection. "I'm quite literally a pariah," he said. "Things used to be different here." Fogel's story illustrates the profound personal costs of dissent within the current Republican landscape, where allegiance to Trump has become a litmus test for acceptance and survival.